The morning sun cast long shadows across the busy downtown street as Maya clutched her worn violin case closer to her chest. Her clothes were wrinkled and dirty from sleeping in the park again last night. The 15-year-old girl hadn't eaten anything in 2 days, and her stomach growled loudly as she watched people hurry past with their morning coffee and breakfast pastries. Maya found a spot near the entrance of the subway station where many people passed by. She opened her old violin case and placed it on the ground in front of her. The velvet lining was faded and torn in several places, but the violin inside still gleamed despite its age. This violin was the only thing she had left from her previous life before everything went wrong. She took out a small handwritten cardboard sign that read, "Can I play for food?" in neat letters. Maya had made this sign 3 weeks ago when she first started living on the streets. She placed it next to her violin case and stood up, brushing the dust off her jeans. Taking a deep breath, Maya lifted the violin to her shoulder and placed the bow against the strings. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering all the hours she used to practice in her comfortable bedroom. Those days seemed like a dream now. Her fingers found their familiar positions on the fingerboard, and she began to play. The melody that flowed from her violin was hauntingly beautiful. It was a piece by Bach that she had learned years ago when she was taking lessons with Professor Williams. The music seemed to fill the entire street corner, rising above the noise of traffic and chattering pedestrians. Maya poured all her emotions into the music, her sadness, her hope, her desperation, and her love for the art that had defined her entire life. Several people stopped to listen, but most just walked by without paying attention. A few dropped coins into her case, and Maya felt a small spark of hope. Maybe she would be able to buy something to eat today. She continued playing, moving from Bach to a beautiful piece by Vivaldi that always made her feel better when she was sad. As she played, Maya noticed 3 teenagers about her age approaching. They were well-dressed in expensive clothes and carried designer backpacks. The girl in the middle had perfectly styled blonde hair and was looking at Maya with a mixture of disgust and amusement. "Oh my God. Look at this," the blonde girl said loudly to her friends, pointing at Maya. "Some homeless girl thinks she can make money by screeching on that old violin." Maya tried to ignore them and continued playing, but her hands began to shake slightly. She had encountered mean people before during her time on the streets, but it still hurt every time someone mocked her. "Seriously, that noise is so annoying," said one of the boys with them. "Someone should tell her to stop before she scares away all the normal people." The third teenager, another girl with dark hair, laughed cruelly. "Look at her clothes. When was the last time she took a shower? And she thinks people want to listen to her play that broken old thing?" Maya's face turned red with embarrassment, but she forced herself to keep playing. The music was the only thing that made her feel human anymore. It connected her to who she used to be before her parents died in the car accident, before she ended up in the terrible foster home, before she ran away and ended up on the streets. "Hey, street girl," the blonde teenager called out loudly. "You're disturbing the peace. Nobody wants to hear that awful noise you're making." Other pedestrians began to notice the commotion. Some looked uncomfortable and walked away quickly, while others stopped to watch what was happening. Maya felt tears beginning to form in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had learned that showing weakness on the streets only made things worse. The blonde girl walked closer to Maya, her friends following behind her like a pack of wolves. "Didn't you hear me? I said stop playing that garbage. You're probably not even playing real music. It's just random notes, isn't it?" Maya finally stopped playing and looked directly at the girl. Her voice was quiet but steady when she spoke. "I'm just trying to earn enough money to buy some food." "I'm not hurting anyone." "Well, you're hurting our ears," the boy laughed. "Maybe you should get a real job instead of begging on the street." "It's not begging," Maya said, her voice getting slightly stronger. "I'm sharing my music. People can choose to listen or not." The dark-haired girl rolled her eyes dramatically. "Your music, please." "That's not music, that's just noise. Real musicians play in concert halls, not on dirty street corners dressed like a homeless person." Maya felt something spark inside her chest. These teenagers had no idea what they were talking about. They didn't know that she had once played in youth orchestras, that she had won competitions, that professors had told her she had the talent to play professionally someday. They saw her dirty clothes and assumed she was just another person trying to trick money out of generous passers-by. "You don't know anything about music," Maya said, her voice becoming firmer. "And you don't know anything about me?" The blonde girl laughed mockingly. "Oh, what? Are you some kind of secret genius or something? Are you going to tell us you went to some fancy music school?" Maya stared at her for a long moment. The girl's words were meant to be sarcastic, but they were closer to the truth than she could possibly imagine. Maya had indeed attended one of the most prestigious music programs in the city before her life fell apart. She had been considered one of the most promising young violinists her teachers had ever seen. But looking at these well-dressed, cruel teenagers, Maya realized that explaining her past wouldn't change anything. They had already decided who she was based on her appearance. They couldn't see past her dirty clothes and homeless situation to recognize the musician she truly was inside. "Just leave me alone," Maya said quietly, raising her violin again. "I'm not bothering you." But the three teenagers weren't finished with their cruel entertainment. They had gathered a small crowd of onlookers, and they seemed to be enjoying the attention their bullying was attracting. Maya could see that this confrontation was far from over, and she braced herself for whatever would come next. The blonde teenager wasn't satisfied with just verbal taunts. She pulled out her expensive smartphone and began recording Maya. "This is perfect," she said to her friends with a wicked grin. "I'm going to put this on social media. Homeless girl thinks she's a musician. This will get so many likes." Maya's heart sank as she saw the phone pointed at her. She knew how cruel the internet could be, and the thought of being humiliated online in front of thousands of people made her feel sick. But she also knew that running away would only make her look more pathetic. She had to stand her ground somehow. "Please don't record me," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I just want to play music and earn enough for some food." "Oh, this is even better," the blonde girl exclaimed. "She's begging me not to record her. This is going to be viral for sure." The boy with them stepped closer to Maya's violin case and looked at the few coins people had dropped in. "Wow, you've made like $3, he said mockingly. "At this rate, you'll be able to afford a candy bar by next week." His friend laughed and added, "Maybe she should try a different career. I heard there's good money in washing car windows at traffic lights." Maya felt her anger building, but she forced herself to remain calm. She had learned during her time on the streets that losing her temper usually made situations worse. Instead, she decided to do the only thing she knew how to do well. She began to play again. This time, Maya chose a piece that she had performed at her last competition before her parents died. It was an incredibly difficult piece by Paganini that required exceptional skill and years of training to master. As her bow touched the strings, the complex melody began to fill the air around them. The change in the crowd's reaction was immediate. Several people who had been walking past stopped in their tracks. The music Maya was producing was nothing like what anyone expected to hear from a homeless teenager on a street corner. It was sophisticated, technically perfect, and emotionally powerful. Maya closed her eyes and lost herself in the music, just like she used to do during her lessons and performances. Her fingers flew across the fingerboard with incredible precision, executing the rapid passages and difficult techniques that made this piece famous among violin students and professional musicians alike. The three teenagers who had been mocking her suddenly fell silent. Their smug expressions began to fade as they realized that what they were hearing was not amateur noise, but genuine artistry. The blonde girl lowered her phone slightly, her mouth dropping open in surprise. More people began to gather around Maya as word spread through the crowd that something special was happening. A businessman in an expensive suit stopped checking his phone and stood mesmerized by the performance. A woman pushing a stroller moved closer, her baby seeming to calm down as the beautiful music washed over them. Maya transitioned seamlessly from the Paganini piece into a hauntingly beautiful melody. She had composed herself during the lonely nights in the park. This was music that came from her heart, expressing all the pain and hope she carried inside. It told the story of loss and survival, of dreams that refused to die even in the darkest circumstances. The crowd around her continued to grow. People were no longer just stopping for a few seconds before moving on. They were staying, drawn in by the extraordinary talent they were witnessing. Some began pulling out their phones to record, but unlike the cruel teenager, they were capturing something they recognized as truly special. An elderly man who had been listening from the edge of the crowd made his way forward and dropped a $20 bill into Maya's violin case. His eyes were filled with tears as he listened to her play. He whispered to the person next to him, "I haven't heard playing like this since I attended the Philharmonic Orchestra last season." The blonde teenager who had started all the trouble was now looking extremely uncomfortable. Her two friends were staring at her with confused expressions, clearly realizing that their leader had made a serious mistake in judgment. The crowd that had gathered was no longer on their side, and several people were giving them disapproving looks. Maya opened her eyes briefly and saw the change in everyone's faces. Where there had been indifference or mockery before, now there was respect and amazement. She could see people in the crowd whispering to each other, trying to figure out who she was and where she had learned to play with such incredible skill. A middle-aged woman approached during a brief pause in Maya's playing. "Excuse me," she said gently, "but where did you study music? That was extraordinary." Maya hesitated for a moment before answering. "I studied at the Metropolitan Youth Music Academy for 8 years, she said quietly. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The Metropolitan Youth Music Academy was one of the most prestigious music schools in the country. Only the most talented young musicians were accepted, and the tuition was incredibly expensive. Several people in the crowd recognized the name immediately. The blonde teenager's face went completely pale. She realized that not only had she publicly humiliated herself by mocking a genuinely talented musician, but she had also been recording it all on her phone. Her hands shook as she tried to figure out how to delete the video without anyone noticing, but it was too late. Other people in the crowd had been recording Maya's incredible performance, and some of them had also captured the earlier confrontation with the 3 teenagers. The contrast between their cruel mocking and Maya's extraordinary talent was striking, and several people were already posting the videos to their social media accounts. Maya continued playing, moving through a repertoire that demonstrated the breadth of her musical education and natural ability. She played classical pieces that required years of study to master, folk melodies that showcased her emotional connection to music, and contemporary compositions that proved her versatility as an artist. With each piece, more money appeared in her violin case. People were not just dropping coins anymore, but bills of various denominations. A group of music students from a nearby college had heard about the performance and rushed over during their lunch break. They immediately recognized Maya's exceptional talent and began spreading the word to their professors and classmates. The 3 teenagers who had started the confrontation were now trapped in the center of a crowd that was completely focused on Maya's performance. They couldn't leave without pushing through dozens of people, and they were getting increasingly dirty looks from audience members who had witnessed their earlier behavior. Maya finished her impromptu concert with a piece that her violin teacher had always said was her signature song. It was a composition that required not just technical skill, but also the ability to convey deep emotion through music. As the last notes faded away, the crowd erupted in spontaneous applause that echoed off the surrounding buildings. For the first time in months, Maya smiled genuinely. The applause reminded her of who she used to be and who she still was inside, despite her current circumstances. She was not just a homeless girl trying to survive on the streets. She was a musician, an artist, someone with a gift that could move people and bring beauty into the world. As the applause died down, Maya looked into her violin case and couldn't believe what she saw. There was more money than she had collected in all her previous weeks on the streets combined. Bills and coins filled the case, and people were still stepping forward to add more. For the first time since she had been living on her own, Maya knew she would be able to buy a real meal and maybe even find a safe place to sleep for the night. The blonde teenager who had started all the trouble was now desperately trying to back away from the crowd, but people were blocking her path. Several audience members had recognized her as the girl who had been mocking Maya earlier, and they were not pleased about it. "Weren't you the one making fun of this talented young lady?" asked an elderly woman with a stern expression. "You should be ashamed of yourself." The teenager's face turned bright red. I didn't know. I mean, we were just..." She stammered, unable to find words to defend her earlier behavior. "You didn't know because you didn't bother to listen," said a man who had been recording Maya's performance. "You judged her based on her appearance instead of giving her a chance to show what she could do." Maya felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness as she watched her tormentors squirm under the crowd's disapproval. Part of her was glad they were being held accountable for their cruelty, but she also remembered what it felt like to be judged and humiliated in public. A woman in a business suit approached Maya as she was carefully packing her violin back into its case. "Excuse me," the woman said, extending a professional-looking business card. "My name is Jennifer Harrison, and I'm a talent scout for the City Symphony Orchestra. I heard your performance, and I have to say, it was absolutely remarkable. Would you be interested in auditioning for our youth program?" Maya stared at the business card in disbelief. 6 months ago, an audition with the City Symphony Orchestra would have been a dream come true. Now it seemed impossible. How could she audition when she didn't even have a permanent address or clean clothes to wear? "I appreciate the offer," Maya said quietly, "but I'm not in a position to audition right now." Jennifer looked at Maya's worn clothes and seemed to understand the situation immediately. Her expression softened with compassion. "I see. Well, let me give you my direct number," she said, writing on the back of the card. "Call me when you're ready. Talent like yours doesn't come along very often, and the orchestra would be honored to work with you." As Jennifer walked away, more people approached Maya with offers of help. A music teacher from a local high school wanted to give her free lessons. A restaurant owner offered her a meal anytime she was hungry. Several people pressed their phone numbers into her hands, telling her to call if she needed anything. Maya was overwhelmed by the sudden kindness from so many strangers. After weeks of being ignored, avoided, or treated poorly because of her homeless appearance, this outpouring of support felt almost too good to be true. The 3 teenagers were finally able to escape the crowd, but not before several more people had confronted them about their behavior. As they hurried away, Maya could hear the blonde girl arguing with her friends. "How was I supposed to know she was actually good?" she was saying defensively. "She looked like any other homeless person." "That's exactly the problem," one of her friends replied angrily. "You always judge people before you know anything about them. Do you realize how bad we look in all those videos people took?" Maya gathered up the money from her violin case and counted it carefully. She had earned over $200, more than enough for food and a decent motel room for several nights. As she prepared to leave, a young man approached her with a laptop computer. "Hi," he said with an excited smile. "I'm a journalism student at the university, and I was wondering if I could interview you about your story. That performance was incredible, and I think people would be interested in learning more about your background." Maya hesitated. She had been trying to stay invisible during her time on the streets, avoiding attention that might lead to questions about her age or situation. But something about this young man seemed genuine and trustworthy. "What kind of story are you thinking about writing?" she asked cautiously. "Well, I witnessed what happened here today," he explained. "I saw how those teenagers treated you, and then I heard you play. I think it's a powerful story about not judging people by their appearance, and about how talent and beauty can be found in unexpected places." Maya considered his offer. Maybe it was time to tell her story. Maybe sharing what had happened to her could help other people understand that homelessness could happen to anyone, and that people living on the streets were still human beings deserving of respect and kindness. "Okay," she said finally, "but can we go somewhere private to talk? And could you help me find some place to get cleaned up first?" The journalism student, who introduced himself as Marcus, was happy to help. He knew of a community center nearby that offered showers and clean clothes to people in need. As they walked together, Maya began to feel something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. At the community center, Maya was able to take her first hot shower in weeks and put on clean clothes donated by local volunteers. When she looked at herself in the mirror afterward, she was surprised to see that she looked like a normal teenager again instead of a desperate street kid. Marcus had waited patiently, and when Maya emerged from the community center, he barely recognized her. Without the dirt and worn clothes, she looked like any other 15-year-old girl who might be walking home from school or meeting friends at the mall. They found a quiet cafe where Marcus bought Maya the first real meal she had eaten in days. As she ate, she began to tell him her story. She talked about her parents' death in the car accident, about being placed with foster parents who were more interested in the monthly check than in caring for her, and about finally running away when the situation became unbearable. "I've been on my own for about 4 months now," Maya explained between bites of her sandwich. "The violin is the only thing I have left from my old life. My parents bought it for me when I was accepted into the music academy." Marcus listened intently, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. Maya found herself opening up more than she had to anyone since her parents died. There was something healing about finally telling someone the complete truth about what had happened to her. "So you were a serious music student before all this happened?" Marcus asked. Maya nodded. "I was planning to audition for conservatories after high school. My violin teacher thought I had a real chance at getting into some of the best programs in the country. And now?" Maya was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I've been so focused on just surviving day by day that I haven't let myself think about the future. But today, hearing people respond to my music the way they did, it reminded me that I'm still a musician, no matter what my circumstances are." As they talked, Marcus realized he wasn't just getting a story about a talented homeless teenager. He was witnessing someone beginning to rediscover hope and possibility in her life. Maya's performance that morning had not only changed how the crowd saw her, but it was also changing how she saw herself. The next morning, Maya woke up in a real bed for the first time in months. She had used some of her earnings to pay for a small motel room, and the feeling of sleeping between clean sheets with a roof over her head felt like pure luxury. As she got ready for the day, she decided to return to the same street corner where everything had changed yesterday. When Maya arrived at the subway station with her violin, she was shocked to see that she was not alone. A small crowd of people was already waiting for her, including several individuals who had witnessed her performance the day before. Word had spread through social media overnight, and videos of her playing had been shared thousands of times. "There she is," called out a woman who had been one of the first to drop money in Maya's case yesterday. "We were hoping you'd come back today." Maya felt overwhelmed by the attention but also grateful. She set up her violin case and began to play, choosing a cheerful piece by Mozart that seemed appropriate for the sunny morning. As she played, more people gathered, and she realized that many of them had come specifically to hear her perform. Among the crowd, Maya noticed a familiar face that made her heart skip a beat. Professor Williams, her former violin teacher from the music academy, was standing at the edge of the group with tears in his eyes. He had obviously recognized her despite her changed circumstances. When Maya finished the Mozart piece, Professor Williams approached her carefully. "Maya Chen," he said gently, "I've been looking for you for months. When you disappeared from school after your parents' funeral, everyone was so worried." Maya felt a rush of emotions she had been trying to suppress for months. Professor Williams had been more than just a teacher to her. He had been a mentor and almost like a father figure, especially during the difficult time after her parents' death. "Professor Williams," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, I couldn't stay in that foster home. The people were horrible to me. I had to leave." The elderly professor nodded with understanding. "I tried to find out where you had been placed, but the social services department wouldn't give me any information due to privacy laws. I've been hoping you would reach out to someone at the school." Maya looked down at her feet, feeling ashamed. "I didn't think anyone would want to help me after I just ran away. I thought I had ruined everything." "Maya, you were one of the most promising students I taught in 40 years of teaching music," Professor Williams said firmly. "Running away from a bad situation doesn't change your talent or your worth as a person." As they spoke, Maya noticed that Marcus, the journalism student from yesterday, had arrived and was discreetly taking notes about the reunion. He had told Maya that he planned to return today to see how her story continued, and she had agreed to let him document whatever happened. Professor Williams looked around at the crowd that had gathered to hear Maya play. "I have a proposition for you," he said. "I've been working with a program that helps young musicians who are facing difficult circumstances. We provide housing, continued education, and intensive music training. Would you be interested in learning more about it?" Maya's heart began to race. The idea of returning to serious music study seemed too good to be true, but she was also scared. "What if I'm not good enough anymore?" she asked. "I haven't had proper lessons in months, and I've barely been able to practice." Professor Williams smiled. "Maya, I just listened to you play Mozart with more emotion and technical skill than most of my current students can manage. Your talent hasn't gone anywhere. If anything, your experiences have given your playing more depth and maturity." A middle-aged woman who had been listening to their conversation stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said to Professor Williams. "I'm Dr. Sarah Martinez, and I coordinate the program he's talking about. I heard about Maya's situation from several people who saw the videos online, and I came here today hoping to meet Her Dr. Martinez explained that the program was funded by donations from wealthy music lovers and provided comprehensive support for talented young musicians who had fallen through the cracks of the traditional education system. Students lived in supervised housing, continued their regular academic education through tutoring and online programs, and received intensive music training from professional musicians. We have several success stories, Dr. Martinez continued. Students who have gone on to attend prestigious conservatories, join professional orchestras, and even start their own music schools. But we're very selective. We only accept students who demonstrate exceptional talent and dedication. Maya looked back and forth between Professor Williams and Dr. Martinez, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. You really think I could qualify for something like that? Maya, Professor Williams said seriously, I think you could be one of the most successful graduates this program has ever had. The crowd around them had been listening to this conversation with growing excitement. Several people began to cheer and applaud, clearly happy to see Maya being offered this opportunity. Someone called out, "You deserve this chance," and others nodded in agreement. Maya felt tears beginning to form in her eyes, but this time they were tears of hope rather than despair. For months she had felt like her life was over before it had really begun. She had given up on her dreams and focused only on day-to-day survival. Now suddenly it seemed like those dreams might be possible again. What would I have to do? Maya asked. How does the application process work? Dr. Martinez smiled warmly. Well, normally we have a formal audition process that takes several weeks. But given your circumstances and the recommendation from Professor Williams, I think we can expedite things. Would you be willing to play something for me right now? Maya nodded eagerly and lifted her violin. She decided to play the piece she had been working on just before her parents died. A beautiful and challenging composition by Brahms that had always been one of her favorites. As she played, she poured all of her hope and determination into the music. The crowd fell completely silent as Maya's violin sang out across the busy street. Even the usual urban sounds of traffic and construction seemed to fade into the background. When she finished, the silence stretched for several seconds before Dr. Martinez began to clap slowly. Maya, Dr. Martinez said with a huge smile, I would be honored to offer you a place in our program. When can you start? The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Maya looked around at all the smiling faces and felt overwhelmed by the support and kindness she was receiving from these strangers who had become invested in her story. Marcus was writing furiously in his notebook, capturing every detail of this remarkable turn of events. He realized that Maya's story was developing into something much more significant than he had originally anticipated. This wasn't just a story about a homeless girl with musical talent. It was becoming a story about the power of community, the importance of not judging people by their circumstances, and the way that sharing our gifts can transform not just our own lives, but the lives of everyone around us. Professor Williams put his arm around Maya's shoulders in a fatherly gesture. Are you ready to come home? He asked gently. Maya looked at her violin, then at the crowd of supportive faces surrounding her, and finally at the business card from the symphony orchestra scout that she still carried in her pocket. For the first time in months, she could envision a future that included not just survival, but success, fulfillment, and the chance to share her musical gifts with the world. Yes, she said with a smile that lit up her entire face. I'm ready. 3 weeks later, Maya was settling into her new life at the residential facility run by Dr. Martinez's program. She had her own small but comfortable room, regular meals, and access to practice rooms with excellent acoustics. More importantly, she was receiving intensive music instruction from some of the city's most respected musicians. Marcus had continued following Maya's story and had published his first article about her in the university newspaper. The story had been picked up by several larger publications, and Maya found herself becoming somewhat famous as the homeless violin prodigy. While the attention was sometimes overwhelming, it had also brought additional support and opportunities her way. One morning, Maya was practicing in her favorite practice room when Dr. Martinez knocked on the door. Maya, there's someone here to see you, she said with an excited expression. Maya followed Dr. Martinez to the main office, where she was surprised to see Jennifer Harrison, the symphony orchestra scout who had given her a business card on that first day. Jennifer was accompanied by a distinguished-looking older man in an expensive suit. Maya, I'd like you to meet Maestro Roberto Delacroix, "The conductor of the City Symphony Orchestra," Jennifer said. "He's heard about your story and your talent, and he has a very special proposal for you." Maestro Delacroix stepped forward with a warm smile. "Miss Chen, I have been in the music world for over 30 years, and I have learned to recognize exceptional talent when I encounter it. After watching the videos of your street performances and hearing the recommendations from Professor Williams and Dr. Martinez, I believe you may be exactly what we've been looking for." Maya felt her heart racing as she wondered what the maestro could possibly want with her. She had only been back in formal training for 3 weeks, and she knew she still had a long way to go to reach professional standards. "Our orchestra has a tradition of featuring young soloists in special community outreach concerts," Maestro Delacroix continued. "These performances are designed to make classical music more accessible to people who might not ordinarily attend symphony concerts. Given your unique story and obvious talent, I would like to invite you to be our featured soloist for next month's community concert." Maya stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to perform with the symphony orchestra?" she asked, certain she had misunderstood. "Indeed I do," the maestro replied. "The theme of this concert is hidden treasures, and we're featuring musicians whose talents might otherwise go unrecognized. Your story perfectly embodies what we're trying to accomplish," Jennifer added. "The concert will be held in the park downtown, the same area where you were performing on the street. It's free and open to the public, and we expect several thousand people to attend." Maya felt dizzy with excitement and terror. The idea of performing with professional musicians in front of thousands of people was both a dream come true and her worst nightmare. "I don't know if I'm ready for something that big," she said honestly. Dr. Martinez placed a reassuring hand on Maya's shoulder. "Maya, you've made remarkable progress in just 3 weeks. Professor Williams tells me you're working at a level that most students don't reach until they've been in the program for months. Besides," Maestro Delacroix added with a twinkle in his eye, "you've already proven you can handle performing for crowds. The difference is that this time, you'll have the full symphony behind you instead of just your own violin." Maya took a deep breath and thought about how much her life had changed since that day when the cruel teenagers had mocked her. She thought about all the people who had supported her and believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. Most of all, she thought about her parents and how proud they would be to see her performing with a professional orchestra. "What would I need to do?" she asked. Jennifer handed her a folder of sheet music. "We've selected a concerto that showcases both technical skill and emotional expression. You'll have 4 weeks to prepare, and you'll rehearse with the orchestra several times before the performance." Maya opened the folder and saw that the piece was Mozart's Violin Concerto No. 3, one of the most beautiful and challenging works in the violin repertoire. It was a piece she had studied before but had never performed with a full orchestra. 4 weeks, Maya repeated, looking at the complex musical notation. "Do you really think I can be ready?" Maestro Delacroix leaned forward with a serious expression. "Miss Chen, I have been conducting for most of my adult life, and I can tell when a musician has that special quality that separates good players from great ones. You have something that cannot be taught or learned from books. You have the ability to make people feel something when you play. That is worth more than perfect technique, though I believe you'll develop that as well with proper training." Over the following weeks, Maya threw herself into preparation with an intensity that impressed everyone around her. She practiced for hours each day, working not just on the technical aspects of the concerto, but also on understanding the emotional content of the music. Professor Williams worked with her on interpretation and style, while other instructors helped her develop her stage presence and confidence. Marcus continued to document Maya's journey, now working on a longer feature article for a national magazine. He had been given special permission to attend rehearsals and observe Maya's preparation process. What struck him most was how Maya had transformed from a frightened, desperate teenager into a confident young artist who was beginning to understand her own power and potential. 2 weeks before the concert, Maya had her first full rehearsal with the entire symphony orchestra, standing on the stage in the elegant concert hall. Surrounded by dozens of professional musicians, Maya felt a mixture of awe and belonging that she had never experienced before. When Maestro Delacroix raised his baton and the orchestra began the opening measures of the concerto, Maya closed her eyes and let the rich, full sound wash over her. She had heard this music countless times in recordings, but experiencing it live with a full symphony was completely different. The sound seemed to vibrate through her entire body. When her entrance came, Maya lifted her violin with steady hands and began to play. The melody soared above the orchestral accompaniment, weaving in and out of the harmonies created by the other instruments. As she played, Maya felt like she was having a conversation with the entire orchestra, each section responding to her musical phrases and supporting her performance. The other musicians were clearly impressed by Maya's playing. During breaks in the rehearsal, several orchestra members approached her to offer encouragement and compliments. The concertmaster, a woman who had been playing professionally for over 20 years, told Maya that she had rarely heard such mature musical interpretation from someone so young. "You don't just play the notes," the concertmaster explained. "You understand what the composer was trying to say, and you communicate that to the audience. That's the mark of a true musician." As the rehearsal progressed, Maya's confidence grew. She found herself taking more musical risks, adding subtle variations in phrasing and dynamics that made her interpretation uniquely her own. Maestro Delacroix encouraged her experimentation, occasionally stopping the orchestra to suggest ways she could make certain passages even more expressive. "Remember," he told her during one break, "this concerto is a dialogue between you and the orchestra. Don't be afraid to lead when it's your moment to shine, but also listen and respond when the orchestra is supporting you." After the rehearsal ended, Maya felt exhilarated but also exhausted. The mental and physical demands of performing with a full orchestra were much greater than anything she had experienced before. But she also felt more alive and connected to her musical identity than she had since before her parents died. Dr. Martinez, who had attended the rehearsal, approached Maya with a proud smile. "How do you feel about the performance in 2 weeks?" she asked. Maya thought for a moment before answering. "Nervous but excited," she said honestly. "I keep thinking about all the people who will be there, including some who might be in situations similar to where I was just a few months ago. If my story can help even one person believe that their circumstances don't define their potential, then all of this will be worth it." That evening, Maya called the phone number that the restaurant owner had given her on that first day. She wanted to invite him and the other people who had shown her kindness to attend the concert. Many of them were surprised to hear from her and thrilled to learn about her upcoming performance. She also thought about the 3 teenagers who had mocked her that day. Maya had seen them around the city a few times since then, and they always seemed to avoid making eye contact with her. She wondered if they had learned anything from the experience, or if they were still judging people based on appearances and assumptions. Marcus published another article about Maya's progress, focusing on her upcoming concert performance. The story gained national attention, and ticket requests for the free outdoor concert began pouring in. The Park Service had to expand the planned seating area and bring in additional sound equipment to accommodate the expected crowd. As the performance date approached, Maya found herself thinking often about her parents. She wished they could be there to see her achieve this dream that they had supported and nurtured throughout her childhood. But she also felt their presence in her music, and she knew that the love and encouragement they had given her was part of what made her playing so emotionally powerful. The night before the concert, Maya had trouble sleeping. She went to the practice room and played through the concerto one more time, not to rehearse the technical aspects, but to connect with the emotional core of the music. As she played, she thought about her journey from the desperate girl begging for food money to the confident young artist she was becoming. Tomorrow, she would stand in front of thousands of people and share her gift with the world. But more than that, she would prove to herself and to everyone listening that talent and worth are not determined by circumstances, and that music has the power to transform lives in ways that seem impossible. The morning of the concert dawned bright and clear. Maya woke up early and spent some quiet time in the practice room, not to rehearse but simply to center herself and connect with her violin. She thought about how far she had come since that day when she had stood on the street corner with her handmade sign, asking if she could play for food. As she got ready for the performance, Maya put on the elegant black dress that the orchestra had provided for her. Looking at herself in the mirror, she saw a confident young musician preparing for the performance of her life, not the desperate homeless girl she had been just a few months earlier. Dr. Martinez drove Maya to the park where the concert would take place. As they approached the venue, Maya gasped at what she saw. The entire area had been transformed into an outdoor concert hall, with a professional stage, excellent sound equipment, and seating for thousands of people. What amazed her even more was that people were already arriving, even though the concert wasn't scheduled to start for several hours. "Maya," Dr. Martinez said gently, "I need to tell you something. This concert has received so much attention that it's being broadcast live on the classical music radio station, and several television stations are planning to cover it as well. Are you okay with that level of attention?" Maya took a deep breath. A few months ago, the idea would have terrified her, but now she realized that the attention wasn't really about her personally. It was about the story she represented and the message that music could carry. "I think I'm ready," she said with more confidence than she felt. Backstage, Maya went through her final preparations with Professor Williams. They ran through a few challenging passages from the concerto, and he offered her some last-minute advice about performing outdoors and dealing with nerves. "Remember," Professor Williams said, "you've already proven you can move people with your music. Tonight is just a bigger audience, but the music is the same. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and most importantly, trust the music itself." As the sun began to set, Maya peeked out from behind the stage curtain and saw that the park was completely filled with people. The main seating area was packed, and people were sitting on blankets and standing in the grass extending far beyond the official venue. She estimated that there were at least 5,000 people waiting to hear the concert. In the front rows, Maya spotted many familiar faces. The restaurant owner who had offered her free meals was there with his family. The elderly man who had dropped the $20 bill in her violin case that first day was sitting in the second row with what appeared to be his grandchildren. Marcus was in the press section with his camera and notebook, ready to document this culmination of the story he had been following. Most surprisingly, Maya saw the 3 teenagers who had mocked her that first day. They were sitting toward the back, looking somewhat uncomfortable but clearly curious about what would happen. The blonde girl who had been the ringleader of their cruel behavior caught Maya's eye for a moment, and Maya was surprised to see what looked like genuine remorse in her expression. Maestro Delacroix gathered the orchestra for their final preparation. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said to the musicians, "tonight we have the privilege of supporting an extraordinary young artist who represents the very best of what music can be. Let's give her, and this audience, a performance they will never forget." As the orchestra took their places on stage, the crowd fell silent with anticipation. Maya waited in the wings, holding her violin and trying to calm her racing heart. She could hear the murmur of thousands of voices gradually quieting as people realized the performance was about to begin. Maestro Delacroix stepped onto the podium to tremendous applause. He raised his hands for silence and then addressed the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this very special evening of music. Tonight's concert celebrates the hidden treasures that exist in our community, the remarkable talents and beautiful spirits that we might overlook if we judge only by appearances. Our featured soloist tonight embodies this theme perfectly." He gestured toward the wings where Maya was waiting. Just a few months ago, Maya Chen was performing on street corners hoping to earn enough money for her next meal. Tonight she performs with us as an artist whose talent rivals that of musicians twice her age, with years more training. Her journey reminds us that greatness can emerge from the most unlikely circumstances, and that music has the power to transform not just individual lives, but entire communities. The applause was deafening as Maya walked onto the stage. She felt the energy of the massive crowd washing over her, and instead of being intimidated, she felt empowered. These people had come to hear her story told through music, and she was ready to share everything she had learned about survival, hope, and the healing power of art. Maya took her place at the front of the orchestra and raised her violin. The crowd fell completely silent, and she could hear the sounds of the evening, birds settling in the trees, a gentle breeze rustling leaves, the distant hum of the city beyond the park. Maestro Delacroix raised his baton, made eye contact with Maya, and gave the downbeat. The orchestra began with the majestic opening of Mozart's Third Violin Concerto. Maya closed her eyes and let the familiar music flow through her, waiting for her entrance. When her moment came, she lifted her bow to the strings and began to play. The first notes of her violin soared over the orchestral accompaniment and seemed to fill the entire park. Maya had never played for such a large audience before, but instead of being nervous, she felt like she was finally home. This was what she was meant to do, what she had been born to do. As she moved through the first movement of the concerto, Maya poured all of her experiences into the music. The pain of losing her parents, the desperation of life on the streets, the kindness of strangers who had helped her, and the joy of rediscovering her musical identity. All of it flowed through her violin and out to the audience. People in the crowd were visibly moved by her performance. Some had tears streaming down their faces, others swayed gently to the music, completely absorbed in the beauty of what they were hearing. Children who had been restless earlier sat perfectly still, mesmerized by the sounds coming from Maya's violin. During the slow second movement, Maya's playing became even more intimate and expressive. She seemed to be having a personal conversation with each member of the audience, sharing her story without words through the universal language of music. The orchestra provided a gentle, supportive backdrop, allowing Maya's voice to shine through clearly. The final movement was joyful and energetic, full of technical fireworks and exuberant melodies. Maya's fingers flew across the fingerboard with perfect precision, but more importantly, her playing conveyed a sense of celebration and hope that was infectious. By the time she reached the final cadenza, a section where she played alone without orchestral accompaniment, the audience was completely enthralled. Maya concluded the concerto with a brilliant flourish, her bow dancing across the strings in the final measures. As the orchestra played the last triumphant chords, she lowered her violin and looked out at the audience with a smile that radiated pure joy. The silence that followed lasted for several seconds, as if the entire crowd was reluctant to break the spell that Maya's music had cast over the evening. Then suddenly the applause erupted like a thunderstorm. Thousands of people leaped to their feet, cheering and clapping with an enthusiasm that seemed to shake the ground. Maya bowed deeply to the audience, then turned to acknowledge the orchestra, who were also applauding enthusiastically. Maestro Delacroix stepped forward and embraced her, whispering in her ear, "That was one of the most beautiful performances I have ever had the privilege to conduct." The standing ovation continued for several minutes. People were shouting "Bravo" and "Encore" from all over the park. Maya felt overwhelmed by the love and appreciation flowing toward her from the crowd. Finally, the applause began to die down, and Maestro Delacroix stepped forward to address the audience one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have just witnessed something truly special. Maya Chen's journey from street performer to symphony soloist reminds us that talent and determination can overcome any obstacle, and that we must never judge others by their circumstances. But more than that, her story shows us the power of community, how strangers can become allies, how kindness can change lives, and how music can bring us all together." He turned to Maya with a smile. "Maya, on behalf of the City Symphony Orchestra and everyone here tonight, I want to thank you for sharing your incredible gift with us. Your music has touched every heart in this audience, and your story will inspire people far beyond this evening." As the formal concert ended, Maya was surrounded by well-wishers from the audience. The restaurant owner pushed through the crowd to give her a hug and tell her how proud he was of her success. The elderly gentleman who had been one of her first supporters pressed another donation into her hands, insisting she use it for her continued musical education. Most surprisingly, the three teenagers who had mocked her approached hesitantly. The blonde girl stepped forward with tears in her eyes. "Maya," she said quietly, "I owe you a huge apology. What we did to you that day was cruel and wrong, and I've regretted it every day since then. Your performance tonight was absolutely beautiful, and it's made me realize how much I need to change the way I treat people." Maya looked at the girl for a long moment, then smiled warmly. "Thank you for saying that," she said. "I hope we all learned something from what happened." As the evening wound down and the crowd began to disperse, Maya stood on the stage looking out over the park where just a few months earlier, she had been sleeping on benches and searching for safe places to spend the night. Now thousands of people had gathered in this same space to celebrate her music and her journey. Marcus approached her for a final interview. "Maya, how does it feel to have come full circle like this?" he asked. Maya thought for a moment before answering. "It feels like I've remembered who I always was inside," she said. "The circumstances of my life changed dramatically, but my love for music never left me. Tonight proved to me that no matter what challenges we face, our gifts and our dreams don't disappear. Sometimes they just need the right moment and the right community support to shine again." As Maya packed up her violin and prepared to leave, she knew that this concert was not an ending, but a beginning. She had offers to audition for conservatories, invitations to perform with other orchestras, and most importantly, a renewed sense of purpose and possibility for her future. Looking back at the stage one last time, Maya whispered a quiet thank you to her parents, to all the people who had helped her along the way, and to the music itself for never abandoning her even in her darkest moments. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but tonight had proven that with talent, determination, and the support of a caring community, even the most impossible dreams could come true.